and some networks of traders in Quebec around Bourassa, a guy named Henri Bourassa, fake nationalist. So Wilfrid Laurier is quickly ousted. He loses power, and he writes to his collaborator, Odie Skelton, who's another nationalist, a really good guy who dies in a mysterious car accident when he's doing battle with a lot of these Rhodes Scholars in 1940, trying to keep Canada out of the British War. But Odie Skelton, he writes a book where he describes the letter that Wilfrid Laurier sent to him, where Laurier says in 1914, Canada is now run by a group in London called the Round Table that controls both the Liberals and the Conservatives. We've been taken over. And this Round Table movement at the time, in Britain, they are working on their own coup d'etat to take control because the Fabian Labour Party has their guy, Herbert Asquith, who's a little soft in the presidential or the prime ministerial position. Now, they have just orchestrated a war using a whole set of secret military alliances. I'm sure a lot of people have read about this. But the World War I was an orchestrated war. It did not have to happen. There's no reason why World War I happened except for these back-channel British military alliances, and also a series of assassinations that unleashed a series of unfortunate consequences that resulted in, what was formerly a skirmish between this, Serbia and Austria. It became very quickly, all of these military alliances were activated where all of a sudden the world was pulled into a meat grinder for 4 years. So Herbert Asquith was not the man for the job, Milner thought. And he worked to create what's called a very British coup. There's a paper, a wonderful, extensive paper. If people just type in a very British coup in Google, I think they'll still get it, Lord Milner. And he basically ousts Asquith and takes control with his whole coterie of Leo Amory, all of these other guys who also worked with the Fabians in the Coefficients Club. Like I mentioned, it's not different things. People treat them like they're different, but they're not. And they then wanted to create the terms of the Versailles Treaty, the post-World War I terms, to shape the New World Order, which became, out of Versailles, was the League of Nations was created, the British Chatham House, the what's called the Royal Institute for International Affairs. That was created in 1919. And also the unpayable debt payments that were designed specifically to break Germany completely, create hyperinflation, which has a lot of parallels in many ways to what's happening today, and then use the effects of chaos of hyperinflation to create a new type of currency with a new type of fascist governance. So people basically had to, at a certain point in 23, Germans had to bring in their wheelbarrows full of Reichsmarks, because it cost you, everyone became a billionaire and people were like burning money to stay warm, and it lost all value. So people were told, okay, just bring in your wheelbarrows of money. We'll give you a new type of currency called a Rentenmark, and it will be tied to new rules that involve breaking unions, destroying unions, getting rid of government jobs, all sorts of things that would only be accepted under fascist imposition. Democratically, people wouldn't accept that. And the guy who wrote that was an associate of the Bank of England's Montague Norman, who ran the Bank of England for like 25 years. And his name was Hjalmar Schacht. Hjalmar Schacht became Hitler's finance minister. And he was the guy who invented the Rentenmark's so-called solution to the controlled crisis. He was also a member, with Mussolini, of an organization called the Pan-Fascist, or the Pan-European Movement, the Pan-European Union, in 1922, as a way to promote a benign feudalism onto the world. That's literally what they wanted. Count Kalergi von
Benign feudalism. What do you mean by that?
I don't know what they mean by it. I think
that's their term then.
That's their term. I didn't. I would
never. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think everyone that wants to impose feudalism or neo-feudalism today, as long as they're not like the peasant class and they're the elite class, I'm sure they see it as benign.
Yeah, if you're part of the parasites, then yeah, I'm sure. If you're the ones getting actually suffering from the cancer, then you don't see it as benign. If you're gonna, no, exactly.
I think it's an issue of perspective. Anyway, go on. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're right. Absolutely, and it's never. I mean, these guys, like I said, it's like for them when they talk about socialism, and like state control of all assets, which is what the Fabian Society was designed to do, was to basically, create a state control and then a redistribution of all wealth of all assets, all private property around an idea of justice. It attracts a lot of poor people who have never had much and who have been abused. And the reality is, those who are promoting that policy, they just want to create feudalism. They don't. For them, the word when they say the word socialism, when Bertrand Russell says that, he's actually saying feudalism. You'll all be equal, but you'll all be equally either poor or dead. Um, and that's sort of like, yeah, what these guys kind of want. And so Hjalmar Schacht, that was the whole thing that he was a part of. People like Otto von Habsburg ran this thing for like 40 years, the pan-European movement. In fact, he created another organization called the Dignita Humani Institute with a whole bunch of other black nobility upper-level figures run out of an old, creepy monastery, 800 years old. And the head of this organization is none other than, I'll just say it, Steve Bannon. That's who they brought in to run this thing, to unite the movements of the right. It's super weird when you go to their website. But yeah, it's basically to repackage Clash of Civilizations for a alt-right sort of audience. Anyway, it gets weird. But all that to say, so that's what the Roundtable movement wanted to do in controlling the terms of the post-World War I age. And the League of Nations was always done with a collective security pact that they embedded. So people like Lloyd George, who was part of the Roundtable, he was prime minister. Milner was the controller of all foreign policy. Leo Amery was in there. Anyway, it was a Roundtable run government. What they wanted was this Article 10. That was a key thing of the League of Nations, of a collective security pact, kind of like what they did for NATO in 1949 later on with Article 5. That's the World War III clause. Basically, if any member gets in a skirmish, just or unjust,
Right.
everyone is obliged to enter into the fight. So also it called for getting rid of nation states having any influence over their military or economy. So it was really just a cover for world government. Bertrand Russell, who's a known pacifist, or that's how he's celebrated, he actually wrote saying that, he supports, his ideal is global anarchism as a global philosophy to get rid of nation states, because these guys are all wanting to get rid of the sovereign nation state institution forever. That's the main goal, is destroy that. But at the same time, as Bertrand Russell says, yeah, like the anarchy of Prince Kropotkin is like the ideal. What we really want to get people to is the League of Nations, as, again, this is where you get into this like benign sort of feudalism, right? The thing that maintains the order